we have going. So we'll also have the video after this, so you can watch the video in full afterwards as well. So we got all our bases covered. It's just from a different angle, and hopefully you can get on one of those and get in your practice this morning. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and come to a easy position on the mat, seated position with our legs crossed in front of us. Give a moment to kind of bring ourselves inside. It's always good to have a little bit of friction to work with. So we use that friction of getting on to Zoom, overcoming the obstacles, as a way for us to practice with today in our tapas. We can soften our gaze or close our eyes. In the 8 limbs of yoga, the pratyahara is the withdrawal of the senses. So we begin that march inward, giving yourself time to settle. Feel your sit bones in the mat. You sit bones down into the earth. As you rise up on the inhale, you can feel your spine lengthen between the vertebrae. Resting our hands quietly or gently on our lap or our knees, wherever it's comfortable. Allowing yourself to come to this moment of now, giving yourself space. And softening into the edges. In places where our mind wants to go, we can begin to notice and feel. One of the easiest ways to connect into the internal is through the breath. So we can, without needing to fix or change anything, simply observe without judgment. Observation without judgment is the highest form of compliment to ourselves. Simply noticing what is. As you tap into the breath, you can feel right at the tip of your nose where that breath draws over the nasal passages, draws down into the belly. So without getting too tied up in the breath, typically on the inhale, we drop down into the seat of our individual will, into the hara, into the belly. We can place our hand there and kind of feel the belly rise as we inhale. Exhale, draws back in towards the spine. Just begin to notice that pattern of rising and falling, opening and closing. Maybe the pause in between those. Begin to notice your body as it sits here on the mat, in the 4 corners of the space. Maybe you can feel into your feet and your legs, all the way through to the trunk, the sit bones. So we're remembering that if there's any goal in yoga, it's that union with the Atman, that Supreme Self. And typically we got to move in our recovery through a lot of jungle, a lot of mind stuff, a lot of samskaras, earlier impressions. We begin our march today collectively, coming together, recognizing ourself in each other. Finding the unity of gathering as a group. You can feel the thoughts as they move through the mind, or notice the thoughts as they move through the mind. You're taking a snapshot in your mind. What's prevalent today? What's moving us today? So in Dharana Yoga, in the sixth limb of yoga, we begin that march of entering into the jungle or to the area of the mind. Ultimately to bypass and to move into the unified self. Maybe an intention arises for our practice today as we move, as we come together. We use our asanas as a way to contact that inner light, that divine spark of connection to the truth of who we are by our practice, by our asanas, by our focus and concentration. We move deeper into the interior self. So we can begin to deepen our breath. Maybe find that breath full and deep into the belly, and on the exhale you can, almost as if you're fogging a mirror, hear that breath in your own ears. So inhale full and deep, and just a few of those, hearing that ha breath, that release, letting go, surrendering. You can exhale full and deep, and on the next inhale, we'll recite externally out loud the bija om. We'll do that 5 times to awaken to that which is the truth of who we are, the Brahman self, Brahmanada. Om is the bija for Brahma, for that undifferentiated self. So exhaling full and deep, inhaling 5 ohms. Pausing here for a moment to notice and feel. We bring our awareness to that space between the eyebrows. Allow for your intention to arise in your practice today. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes or come back to the room. So great, I think we're ready. Let's go ahead and come to an all-fours position on the mat. We brought ourselves to center. Now we can move out into our asanas and practice our mindfulness as we move, bringing ourselves continually back to what's at hand, releasing the non-essential. So we can start in this all-fours position and draw back into that child's pose for a moment and breathe. Pause here again in that pure potential. We start in that seed. Everything is within us. We aren't searching outward. Bringing ourselves up into that all-fours position, walking our hands slightly forward of our shoulders, coming into a modified plank, and then back into that child's pose. Beginning that vinyasa or that flow, which helps create that meditative quality in the mind. So today is our last day of our group's 300-hour teacher training. And first of all, I would recommend everybody and anybody to sign up for the teacher training here at True Freedom. It's a great way to deepen your own practice. You don't have to aspire to become a teacher, even though we all are. But it helps build community and deepen your own internal connection. So today we celebrate that as a group. And it's beautiful to be here today to connect with you as well. So we can come all the way onto our belly, bring our elbows underneath our shoulders, and come up into a Sphinx pose. Just let your belly rest on the mat and kind of move side to side a little bit. Kind of feel the elongation of the spine, the space between the vertebrae, lengthen those squishy sponges, there's a name for them, between the vertebrae. Allows for the flow of energy and blood. Go ahead and bring your hands where your elbows are. We'll come up into a little baby cobra. Pause here for a moment. And then push into our hands. Come back into that child's pose. Back up into that all four. Down into the belly. And up into that baby cobra. So we're waking up the spine. We're waking up the Kundalini force energy. Rises from the base of the spine through the crown. As we release the non-essential. Let go of our desires that are of things that are impermanent in the world. So beginning to feel the breath deepen as you move in your own cadence, whatever that is for you. And then eventually finding ourselves flat back onto our mat with our right arm in front of us. Go ahead and lift that left leg and bend that left knee. Push off your left hand and roll to your right side. Opening that left arm towards the ceiling. Opening wide to the side. And then pausing here for a moment, you can feel that left arm kind of come into a clock position, down to the 6 and up to the 12. Bending that elbow if you like. Just continuing to notice and feel. The awareness comes when we give space to observe, to listen, to feel, to notice, to hear. You can bring your belly back towards the mat when you're ready. Pause here for a moment. Just resting our forehead on our hands and pausing, feeling the breath in the front body. You can direct the breath to the diaphragm and feel the rib cage expand. It's a great place to feel that diaphragm. The internal organs. When you're ready, you can bring that left arm forward of you. Bring your right hand underneath your shoulder. Lifting up through that right leg. Go ahead and bend the knee. Open out towards the right side, or to the right side of your mat. Bring that right arm towards the ceiling. Finding space in that shoulder girdle. Opening up the breath. One of the stories in our teacher training, we are studying the Upanishads. And in the Kartika Upanishad, speaks about God's giving Nachiketa 3 boons, 3 wishes. You can come back to your belly when you're ready. So it begs the question, if somebody were to come to us and ask us what we wanted, could we tell them, bring it back up into that all fours position, back into that child's pose when you're ready. So we start to ask ourselves, what is it we're looking for in our practice today? What are we after? Go ahead and come up into that all fours again. Let's go ahead and tuck those toes under and come into a down dog. Find the fullness of this pose by bending your knees deeply for a moment and then feeling the sit bones really rise up towards the ceiling. It's like kind of like turkey feathers fly way up there. Let your inner thighs roll in towards each other and then unbend those knees and push back through the tops of the thighs. Feel the belly rise. Find the fullness of the pose. This is Dharana yoga. This is concentration on one point, one asana here. All of what this entails in your body. Beginning that march inward through the asanas. We can come forward into that all fours position or plank or modified plank, whichever you choose here. Go ahead and come back up into that down dog and just continue that same action. You can bend one knee or the other, kind of play with that down dog a little bit. Really embellish it. So let's all bend that left knee, push into the right hand, and draw back with that right hip as far as we can. Beautiful. Let's press in or bend that right knee, press into the left hand, and draw that left hip back as far as we can. Really focusing on what's happening in the mind, in the body, in the emotions as we move. Bring it back forward again. Let your knees drop, or you can come into full plank. Come into chaturanga. Come all the way flat down onto the mat. Back up into that full cobra. Back into the all fours position when you're ready. And into a down dog if that feels okay. So now we've added this next move to our vinyasa. Come forward into that plank, modified plank. Back into the belly, little baby cobra. Back up into that all fours or down dog. So continue here. I'm going to be quiet for a moment. I know that's hard for me sometimes. See if you can allow yourself to draw deeper into your own practice. Continuing the same pattern. Down dog, chaturanga, little baby cobra or full cobra. Just 2 more times here. Finishing back on our belly, letting our head rest on our hands for a moment. Just pause there for a moment to breathe. When you're ready, you can bring your hands behind you, down by your hips. Press the tops of your feet into the mat, tops of your thighs. Root down into the front of your hips, right into the hip tips. Feel that belly button just lift slightly in between those 2 hip tips. So from there, your nose is going to be towards the mat. We'll reach to the crown of the head towards the end of the mat, so lengthen first. Root down into the front of the hips, tops of the thighs, tops of the feet. And then when you're ready, you can lift up into, I think this is done. I don't know the name of this pose, but we'll lift our head with our arms behind us. Dandasana maybe? Dharandasana. Go ahead and lift your legs a little bit higher. I saw a picture the other day where there was a whole flower bed. It was a cartoon, a whole flower bed in the back of somebody in this pose with beautiful flowers blooming out. It was really beautiful. So we're lengthening, lifting, find that space in the mid-back, and then when you're ready, release back down those hands to underneath the shoulders, back up into that all fours position, back into that child's pose. Let's try that down dog one more time. Come all the way up into that down dog. Extending our left leg towards the ceiling, finding that full extension, pushing into the heel of the foot. Go ahead and draw the knee in towards the chest. Come forward over your hands slightly. Pause here for a moment and let the top of the thigh come towards your belly and round out in that mid-back. Feel the belly button, draw towards the spine. Go ahead and extend that leg back out behind you. And finish again with that knee in towards the chest. Slide over your hands. Let that top of the thigh come towards your belly and round out through that mid-back. Push down into your hands. Release both knees down onto the mat. Take a pause there for a moment. It could be a short pause. You can come back up into that down dog and take it out to the opposite side. So we're extending the right leg towards the ceiling, watching where our thoughts lie, noticing the distraction and how we get pulled away from our focus. Drawing that right knee in towards the belly, opening over towards the hands, bringing the top of the thigh towards the abdominals, and then back out again. Just a few more times here. Feeling the lift in the front body. And then when you're ready, both knees come back down onto the mat. We can widen our knees on the mat and come into a child's pose again with our knees wide. We can bring our hands behind us. We do a lot of the same moves in yoga, but you can find what works for you in any one moment. There's a lot of different ways to do a pose. You can rest your third eye on the mat. Feel your hands behind you for a moment. Tuck those toes under and press into the toe box. Behind the belief of separateness is a wakeful openness that is our essence, our primordial being. Intentionality goes against our conditioning, and the mind may react. So sometimes it can be an all-out war in our head or in our mind, and we just are maintaining the focus of the essential. Bringing it on back to both hands underneath the shoulders, coming back up into that all fours position. One more time, we'll tuck those toes under and come to a down dog. I'm pausing here for a moment. You can come all the way to the tops of your toe box, way up on your toes, bend your knees deeply. Let your belly lift. We're not going to jump yet, we're going to fake it. So imagine yourself jumping and lifting your belly and letting your belly carry you to the front towards your hands. And then when you're ready and you feel confident, go ahead and make that hop, but let it originate from the core. Beautiful. Let's go ahead and let the head hang here. Roll up one vertebrae at a time. Wonderful. We'll come to a standing position on our mat with our hands together in Anjali Mudra in front of the heart. Pressing those hands together, we can feel the shoulders widen, a place for our heart to come more fully up front and personal. The breath is deepening. Go ahead and bend your knees slightly. Press into all four corners of the feet. Stand firmly in Tadasana. And exhaling those hands to the side. Pause here for a moment and just feel this neutral stance deeply into the earth. As you inhale, you can feel that breath draw all the way up through the center of the foot or the feet, all the way through the crown of the head, and then back down to the earth on the decharge. So the inhale is the inspiration, the exhale is the decharge, release. On the next inhale, you can lift those arms towards the ceiling. Pause here for a moment and find that full extension. Go ahead and let the heart come forward, maybe look towards the ceiling. And then exhale, bring those arms forward or out to the side. It might be a little bit easier on your back. Exhale full and deep, and then inhale into that box pose. So if you were to see yourself in a mirror, you might be a 90-degree angle. In order to get that, sometimes we have to bend our knees slightly. Look down towards the floor and lengthen through the crown. And then exhale, inhale halfway up to that box pose. You can bring your hands to the tops of your thighs if that helps, or you can just let them hang, whichever you prefer. Just a couple more here. Inhaling, exhaling, and then when you're ready, roll up one vertebrae at a time, which will be the next part of our vinyasa. Exhaling those arms to the front or to the side, whichever you prefer. Inhaling halfway up, letting the head hang, and then rolling up one vertebrae at a time. You kind of intuitively know this one as you let the spine curl and uncurl. You can feel that Kundalini energy begin to rise. Maybe your thoughts have become more clear. It's a great place to observe halfway through our practice as we progress in that march towards unity of self. So we're just continuing one more time in this vinyasa or flow, bringing our focus to our four corners of our own mat. Rolling up one vertebrae at a time when you're ready. We'll pause here in a standing position. Bring everybody to the same page. So let's go ahead and come to a high lunge with our left leg behind us. Go ahead and step back with our right knee directly over the right ankle. Come to a nice warrior one. So you can create a little space between your feet, almost as if you're on a railroad track. Make a wide stance. Or you can create a little more narrow stance to challenge yourself in your balance. I like to bring my hands to my hips to begin, and then bow towards self or look to my navel. And notice what happens. My belly button draws back, side bodies draw back. See if you can't maintain that action, and then shift the rib cage directly over the hips. So anytime you want to activate the core, just look to your navel. That's one of my favorite ways to do that. Go ahead and let your gaze draw forward as your arms lift up towards the ceiling. Good, so we can really activate here. This is that line where we're moving from awareness, the dharana, that focusing in the pose. And if we stay here long enough, we can find that joy and exhilaration on the other side of the heat and the tapas. So that's our practice in yoga, is to move from the gross to the subtle. Just a few more breaths here. And no pose is static, so you're constantly finding that spot for yourself where you can feel all the action in your body. Move deep into the center of the core. And on the next exhale, you can bring your hands down towards your mat. Walk that back foot forward. Come up into that box pose again, 90-degree angle. Let your head hang. And this time we're going to step that right foot back. Come up into that warrior one on the opposite side. So again, we're playing with that, toggling between becoming aware of ourself in the room, on the mat, in our skin, in our bones. And then you can draw that awareness deeper into the core. Dhyana yoga is we become that. It is that. We are that. There is no difference between that and me. So finishing with that breath, find the fullness of the inhale. On the exhale, bring your hands back to the mat. Step back into, or bring that back foot forward to match the front foot. Come up into that box pose again one more time. And then let your head hang. Roll up one vertebrae at a time, lifting all the way towards the ceiling. So we have a succession of poses we can marry together. We'll bring our hands together in Anjali Mudra. Pause here for a moment to breathe. Focusing inward on our intention. Movement begins in the mind. Inhaling full and deep, exhaling those arms to the side. Lifting up on that inhale, swan dive forward or arms forward. Inhale halfway up. Go ahead and bring your hands to your mat. You can walk or jump your feet back into chaturanga. Come all the way flat down onto the mat, up into that cobra, back into that down dog. Bend deeply into those knees. You can pause here for a couple breaths. On the next breath, you can jump or walk your feet forward. Come up into that box pose, let your head hang, roll up one vertebrae at a time. Bring it all the way back down. Swan dive one more time. Inhale halfway up. Jump or walk back into that down dog, all fours. Chaturanga, whichever you prefer. Baby cobra, full cobra. Back into that down dog and pause. Pause here for a moment. We're going to move into a hip opener here from this pose. Lifting that left leg towards the ceiling. We're going to come into pigeon. So like we did before, we brought our knee in towards our chest. Go ahead and slide over your hands. Feel that knee come all the way up towards the belly. And then open that knee towards the left side of the room. Come down into that pigeon pose. Go ahead and let the little baby toe side of your foot kind of karate chop that mat. Press into the shin of the front leg, and you can walk that back knee back if you like. So again, it's that slow progression. You can imagine it as dharana, the awareness of this pose, all of the pieces of it. Focusing is fixing our attention on one thing. It could be our breath, it could be the total asana, all four corners of our mat. And then in dhyana yoga, we go past that, we move into the unification. So we become the pose. Everything works together as one. We're working towards samadhi in our practice, towards coming to that place where we experience ourselves as one. So giving yourself a moment here. You can play with the different movements. You can bring that back foot up behind you. Helps you get a nice stretch in that quadricep of the back leg. If you like, you can reach for that foot with your right hand or your left. Get a little baby back bend, a heart opener. You can push your foot into your hand if you're there, or you can push your hand into your foot, either or both. You have a different experience in both. You can hear my voice, you can see me on the TV, but your focus wants to be internal in your own practice, in the four corners of your mat. And then when we're ready, we can release out again, slowly unwind. The most important part of yoga is the transitions. So slowly move between this. We can slowly lift back up again into that all fours, or you can simply roll over to that hip if that's easier for you. But finding your way back to a down dog eventually, opening up, bending one knee in the next, dropping down to an all fours position, and back into that child's pose. So you might feel different between that left and the right side. Go ahead and just toggle back and forth with those hips. See if you can feel one hip differently than the other. This is dharana, observation. What does that feel like as opposed to this? When I do this, what happens? So we can bring it back up to that all fours, into that down dog. Bring it back into the right leg extending up towards the ceiling. So we can again bring the top of the thigh towards the belly. Find that full lift. And then when you're ready, gently place that foot down onto the mat. So again, you can press that shin of the front leg down into the mat, and you can feel a little bit deeper release in the hip on that right side. You can also walk that back knee back slightly and slowly find your way down into the progression of this pose, slowly unwinding the tension or knot in the right hip. So it may feel good to you to bring that back leg up towards the ceiling, or the lower leg towards the ceiling. Kind of drag that knee forward a little bit. Grab that foot with your hand. Chaos within reveals itself, allowing you to gently train your mind to more readily accept stillness as its natural state. Let ourselves fall into that open awareness, past even observation. The breath and the body and the mind are unified. Many times it's from, in our recovery, especially it's from a place of not this, not this. We notice our tendencies, our desire, energy. It's okay to reach Brahmananda from a not this standpoint. So we can bring ourselves back to that all fours position on the mat, slowly unwinding again. Remember that the asana is really our meditation in action. It's a way for us to find that same, we'll draw back into a child's pose, I'm sorry. Same mechanism in our practice of asanas. Go ahead and come back up into an all fours position. Another one of my favorite poses is the gate pose. So let's go ahead and bring that left foot, our left hand flat onto the mat and underneath our shoulder, or maybe slightly forward of that shoulder. And then the right leg extends out behind us. So we're going to reach up into a full extension with that right arm. And just, again, embellish it. Go ahead and let that arm come near your ear, round out into that right side, so almost a concave, and you can really almost drop that hand to the floor and feel that fullness in the right side body. Go ahead and reach towards the front of your mat. Go ahead and let your belly turn more forward towards your mat, and then reach as if you're going to grab something way out in front of your mat, and then just drag your fingertips all the way down your mat and back up into the towards the ceiling, and then reach, grab almost, and drag back. So we exaggerate it, find the fullness of the movement. You can bend the knee even a little bit, really move into it. Coming back to the all fours, pausing there for a moment. We'll do a little bit of cat-cow here. We kind of skipped over that. Give ourselves time to kind of rebalance side. So you can move from the tailbone or the head. Sometimes it helps if you move from one end or the other rather than the middle. You don't miss so much. Attention is trained inward on itself. The Upanishads that we're studying look inward. Remembering that the teacher is within you. So we'll turn out to the gate pose on the opposite side, so that right hand is on the mat with our right knee. Left arm is reached up towards the ceiling. We're going to find that fullness of the left side body as we cultivate that concentration, moving the arm towards the ear. Watching our thoughts where they go. Notice how often we entertain the non-essential. And when you're ready, you can start that reaching and dragging action. So total attention on what we're doing. How can we align deeper with the mechanism of dharana, our awareness, so we can move closer to the meditation? Bringing it on back to that all fours position, back into that child's pose for a moment. Finding that breath. Each time you refocus your breath and your alignment during your yoga class, your yoga experience deepens and expands. Just the same thing we're doing with our mind. Dhyana yoga is the expansion of self into the larger self. When you're ready, you can come back to the all fours position. We'll turn to our seated position while we're here. Time is getting away from us. So from here, we'll bring our hands to the top of our thighs and just start a circular motion from the hips. Feel that action of the spine moving around the pelvis. You can close your eyes, or sometimes it's nice to fix your gaze on something. Your focus is internal. And then when you're ready, you can switch it out to the opposite way. Remembering that we exist as pure Atma. That is ourself. We are that. We just are a little bit confused. It's the nature of creation to hide self from self. Big hide and seek game. Bringing it on back to center when you're ready. Go ahead and bring your arms up into a goalpost position. And we can do the Kundalini breath that I've learned so beautifully from doing the Kundalini here at True Freedom. Turning side to side, inhaling in one direction, exhaling in the opposite direction. Open up those energy pathways to the brain. So we train the mind to perceive ourselves and the world as one. There is no difference. There's no separateness. Oneness is centered on loving devotion to ourselves, to God, to our higher self in our recovery. Continuing here, inhaling. You can take it just a little bit faster with a little more challenge, left and right. Inhaling, exhaling. Looking in the direction you're turning, or you can close your eyes. Just a few more here. Bringing it on back to our hands on top of our thighs, pausing with our eyes closed for a moment. Feeling the breath full and deep down into the belly. Maybe do a 3-part breath, bringing the breath to the rib cage, all the way up into the upper chest, back palate of the throat, crown of the head. Marrying all 3 segments together in one long breath, pausing at the top of the breath. And just slightly catching the breath and then letting the energy build, exhaling, pausing at the bottom of the breath. Again, inhaling, pausing at the top of the breath. So as we move a little bit closer to the end of our practice, we come into Savasana. So we can go ahead and lie down on our backs for a moment. We'll come a little bit closer to that march of Savasana, which is our practice of ultimate samadhi. We're lying on our back with our backs of our hands towards the floor, rolling the shoulders out and maybe pressing the elbows into the mat, dropping the shoulder blades just a little farther down the back. Sometimes I like to lift my hips and lengthen my tailbone just a little bit farther down towards the end of the mat. And rest comfortably in this Savasana pose. Each of you has what that feels for you in comfort. We begin to move into dhyana, the seventh limb of the Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. If we look at the 12 steps in our recovery, we can see throughout the 12 steps, all the steps really, but specifically the second step, the third step, the 11th step, it talks about our connection with the divine. Ultimately, it's that keen awareness without focus. You become that. It's a meditative state of being. In recovery, we shine the light on our attachments so that they can be released. We observe without the judgment. Judgment. We contemplate it in all its colors and forms, in a profound, abstract state of meditation. A few more minutes here. The inner yoga, the fixing of the mind on the Supreme. Poem by Mary Oliver. When I am among trees. When I am among trees, especially the willows and the honey locust, equally the beech, the oaks and the pines, they give off such hints of gladness. I would almost say they save me, and daily. I'm so distant from the hope of myself, in which I have goodness and discernment, and never hurry through the world, but walk slowly and bow often. Around me the trees stir in their leaves and call out, "Stay a while." The light flows from their branches, and they call again. "It's simple," they say. And you too have come into the world to do this, to go easy, to be filled with light, and to shine. When I Am Among the Trees by Mary Oliver. Give yourself time to settle into the gladness. Truth that we are the one. Meditation is like giving a hug to ourselves, getting in touch with that awesome reality in us. While meditating, we feel a deep sense of intimacy with God and a love that is inexplicable. So when you're ready, you can begin to notice the transition, how that works for you. You can follow the cues of your mind to begin to move your fingers and your toes. You can let your body lead in the transition, tell you how fast or how slow to go, or what it might need. As you come eventually to one side or the other, pausing there for a moment. With our intention to continue this free-flowing concentration into our meditation practice, slowly we'll find our way to that seated position with the palms together in front of the heart. Seeing ourselves as nothing other than that undifferentiated spark of creation energy, which flows out into the world. There is nothing other than that. Allowing for that to be present within our own hearts. Be bringing someone, situation, person, place, event into our mind's eye and send that light, that connection to the truth outward, and trusting that it'll be received. And chin falls down to the chest, then namaste. Light in me honors the light in each one of you. Namaste. Thank you for coming. And we'll have meditation here, so if you want to take a break, we do our meditation practice from 11:30 to 12. So you can grab your water or bring yourself to your cushion on your mat, and we'll do a little bit of meditation. Grab my water. We have a harmonium here at the studio, so I thought I would play a little bit of a very little bit that I know, and we'll om a little bit before we move into our meditation. I would like to talk a little bit about some of the story of Nachiketa, just to kind of marry it a little bit into our meditation. So going back to the question of if somebody were to, if God were to appear in front of you and asked you what did you want, was ready to give you the boons, give you the positive boost your soul might need to move in the world, would we know what it is that we would say to that being? And that's a little bit of what the story in the Katha Upanishad talks about with Nachiketa. It's really that the young boy has a really strong aspiration towards the divine. And he's, in the story, like all stories in India, they're kind of funny how they're told, but it's really pointing to a mechanism within our own soul. He's a little bit disheartened by his father's actions, and he tells his father that. His father, go see, like I always think about it as like, go see your dad. Go see the father of death, which is like what would be a hard thing for a parent to do. But so Nachiketa goes to this god and he says, I need to know what is the meaning of all this. I need to understand. And the god was late coming to the meeting, so he said, well, I'm sorry, but I'll give you three boons for that. And so he said, you know, what would you want? What would you like? And Nachiketa said, the first one is that I'd like to heal a rift between my father and I. So he was thinking of humanity. He was connecting into the idea that we are all one, and that he couldn't go anywhere unless he was in some type of peace with his Father, with humanity. So he asked for that, and the God gave him that. The second boon he asked for was fire. He asked for the God to help him understand the fire puja, or the fire ritual, which really, if we look at the mechanism of that, it's understanding that spark of creation energy within us. In our practice today, we moved from the mindfulness of awareness so that we could hone our skill of mindfulness to come deeper into a practice of truth, of being merging with that true creation, or that spark of creation energy. So the God gave Nachiketa that boon, and okay, great, that's great. The third one was Nachiketa got smart. He said, I want to know the mystery of life and death. And the Yama, the god of death, said, well, everything else but that. Here, you can have this house, you can have all the glories of what's in this world. Nachiketa was smart enough and spiritually mindful enough to say that all of the impermanent things were not what he was looking for, that he was looking for the permanent. And he pushed Yama on this, and ultimately Yama gave him the boon, and he was self-realized. And part of his realization was to go back out and to help others to find that truth of the unified self. And so today in our meditation practice, we can hold that story of Nachiketa, or that desire energy. We're purifying our desires instead of for the non-essential, for that which is to take us further into our knowingness that there is no difference between us and the exterior, that we are that. We are the one in that. So I thought I would start out with a little bit of practice with dharana, with the mindfulness sort of practice. And then we'll have a little discussion on that, and then we'll move into a little more of what dhyana, practice with the dhyana yoga. So we have that focused concentration where we have one, in our practice, we'll see what that is. We're moving into focusing on one thing, kind of like we did in our practice in our asanas. And then we'll move into the dharana yoga. But first I'd like to do a little bit of Om, just because it's fun and I'm new at it. I get to practice with everybody. So we'll find ourselves in a seated position if you're not there, just a relaxed position. And the harmonium is to help us to kind of get into the flow of the meditative state. I hope that's true with the way I play it today. So we can close our eyes, kind of come to a little bit of an inward focus. We'll exhale full and deep. Inhale. However your Om flows, it doesn't have to flow with mine. We'll do it for a little while. Just continue to, once your Om is done, say the Om again. Pausing here with our eyes closed. Begin to notice your breath, connection internally to the self. When your attention is relatively stable on the breath, try shifting your focus to feature the process of thinking itself. Let the breath sensations move into the background. Allow the thinking process itself to come forward. Observing the thoughts arise and pass away like clouds in the sky, or like writing on water. Allowing the mind to function as a thought mirror. Simply reflecting, registering whatever comes, as it comes. Whatever goes, as it goes. Rise in the field of awareness, lingering perhaps, and passing through. As best you can, note their content, the emotional charge of your thoughts maybe. If possible, not being drawn into them, or thinking about them, or thinking the next thought. Just maintaining the frame through which you are observing the process of thought. Noting that the individual thought does not last long. It's impermanent. It can be helpful to take note of the thoughts that are centered on the I, or the me, or the mine. How we are in relationship to those thoughts. Notating them in the field of awareness. Note those thoughts when the mind creates a self to be preoccupied with how well or how badly life is going. If you get lost in this, you can always return back to just noticing the breath. Remembering this is not an invitation to generate thoughts. It's simply an invitation to attend to the arising, the lingering if they linger. And they're passing away in the field of awareness. Now, just sit. Don't hold on to anything. Don't look for anything. Practice being completely open and receptive to whatever comes into the field of awareness, letting it all come and go, watching, witnessing. Allow yourself to be the non-conceptual knowing. That awareness that already is. One more little short exercise here. Consider something or someone that you love deeply. It could be a pet, a person, it could be a tree or the nature, flower, something beautiful to you, something really intimate to you. Bring it up in your mind's eye. Hold it in your third eye. Interface with that object of beauty. It's a child. Consider what that child might be saying. If it's a tree, what it might be moving, what it might look like. It's a person interfacing. Feeling the emotion of joy in reference to this object of attention. Increase that observation, awareness. Entertain it. Open to all the edges of the beauty of the love connection there. Feel yourself as that, fully encompassing all of that love, that energy within each cell of your body. Letting go of everything but this one awareness. You can slowly come back to the room, giving yourself time in the transition to allow for a march back outward. So I'd like to give a little bit of time for us to maybe reflect on our own experience today and open outward to the group. I don't know if we can do that on Face. Can we do that? Okay. Can we do it? Can we interface with people? No, okay. That's fine. That's fine.
Do you want to turn Facebook on and keep Zoom on?
That's okay. We'll just keep it this way.
Can we talk in Zoom?
I don't know if we can hear your voice, but if you want to try to open your mic.